now. I came back again. So I was saying earlier, I didn't get scared off. But welcome everyone to the afternoon version of the CTF. So I'm excited to be here today. For those of you who may be wanting, for community members who are maybe listening, I want to remind folks that you can comment at West Seattle Bridge at seattle.gov. That's a way for you to provide comments if you're not a member of the community task force. And for all the community task force members, welcome. And I'll just say one thing for the meeting today. We have tried to create a lot of space for you all to be able to have conversations and ask questions. We felt like last meeting we were like, just running through the content really quickly, and we wanted to just pull back a little bit so that y'all can take a breath and ask questions and engage in the dialogue in the way that feels right to you. So happy to hear feedback for those of you if you feel like today is too slow or just right or whatever, so that we can Goldilocks our way to the right pace for the meeting. So with that, I will stop talking and turn it over to Mayor Nichols.
Thank you, Angie, and welcome back. It was always a test during my administration whether a department head came back for a second meeting with me. We thought that showed some hope for success. So welcome, we're glad you're back. The agenda should look pretty familiar to you. It's very similar in terms of the order of things to the last meeting. Lots of good information bringing us up to speed on the repair project and the reconnecting West Seattle elements. There are a couple of things I want to point out. One, we have achieved a milestone, and we're going to hear a little more about that in a few minutes, but we're at 30% of design of the repair, which means that we can now make pretty solid assumptions about what the cost is going to be, what the schedule is going to be, and what work is going to be necessary. Not complete yet, because it is only 30%, but at that point, you've got enough information to make some good decisions. Secondly, and as I said, you're going to hear a little more. Secondly, we're almost to an important anniversary. March 23rd will mark 1 year since the emergency closure of the West Seattle Bridge. You know better than anyone how much work has gone into getting us from then to today. So I want to thank you all for the work that you have done to get us to a point where we can start to see a light at the end of the bridge. And then thirdly, as Angie mentioned, there's going to be a number of points that during our meeting where task force members are going to be able to ask questions and share thoughts. But my co-chair, Paulina, is going to, after a special guest who she will introduce, open it up for about 10 minutes for your thoughts on where we are and where we ought to be headed in terms of a task force. So with that, let me call on my co-chair, Paulina.
Thank you, Mayor Nichols. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paulina Lopez, and I am speaking from our Duwamish territories here, and I'm the executive director for the Duwamish River Cleanup Coalition, and as well as South Park community member. I am again also thankful for this year that we are about to be embarked together, and so thank you for all your contributions, for your commitment as a community task force. We have learned a lot from each other, and I'm particularly also thankful for our colleagues at the SDOT, and of course to my co-chair, Greg. I would like to introduce Alex Stone, who is representing today Adam Smith, Congressman Adam Smith office, and I think I understand you're here. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Stone, and I'm a staffer in Congressman Adam Smith's office. I'm happy to be here today, and thank you for including me in the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for being here. And of course, our regards to Congressman Smith. I would also like to introduce a very special guest today who's going to be joining us in a few minutes, Deputy Mayor Casey Sixkiller. who's going to be addressing us some of the information that Greg already referred to on the 30%. And so we're very glad to have you as part of our community meeting today, Deputy Mayor Sixkiller.
Thanks, Paulina. I appreciate it. Can I provide some words of welcome now? Would that be appropriate? Okay.
Please do that.
Paulina, Mayor Nichols, wonderful to see you both and to see all of our community task force members again virtually someday. Hopefully soon we'll be able to do this in person, but I appreciate always the opportunity to join this important group of community stakeholders in this process. And again, thank all of you for your continued support and engagement on this important project. Today is an important milestone for our West Seattle high-rise bridge project. As Mayor Nichols said, we are we'll be talking today about some of the what we now know that we're 30% design for the replacement. And as of today, we've started the selection process for our private contractor to begin making the improvements necessary to bring the high bridge back online, and then obviously the repairs that are necessary, improvements that are necessary on the low bridge. But clearly, you know, it's been a long year. I think all of us over this past year have felt the impacts of COVID. Those of you that call West Seattle home, or your businesses are home, or require you to travel to West Seattle have had the additional impact of this bridge closure. And I just want you to know, on behalf of the mayor, all of us here at the city of Seattle, we understand that and are working incredibly hard to bring this project to fruition and get that bridge reopened on time and according to our schedule in 2022. So number one, thank you for that. Two, I just want to acknowledge again that none of this would be possible without all of the inputs that we're getting, not just from our SDOT team and our contractors, but folks that are on this call, as well as other community stakeholders. All of this work going on with our critical efforts around reconnecting West Seattle through, you know, roadway repaving, potholes, installing infrastructure, redirecting traffic, and looking at other projects that we can bring online faster and earlier to help mitigate the ongoing impacts of the bridge closure. So there is obviously a lot more work that remains. But again, today is a critical milestone for us. I'm excited that our team is online to be able to walk you through what we now know, and as we begin our work in getting this project completed and all of you reconnected in a more efficient way to the rest of the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor Sixkiller, and for those encouraging words. And as we said, you know, we are into almost marking in the 23rd year of the closure of the West Seattle Bridge. So this is exciting milestone, and we also wanted to provide some of this time inspiring Deb Barkers, that she is the one who made us realize that, hey, we are about to be hitting the year together, and to provide some community opportunity to talk to each other and how are things going, and provide this platform at this time to hear from community members on either the year that we're hitting or the milestone that this is our opportunity to be talking. Personally, I would say, you know, for the South Park area, the Duwamish Valley, of course, we have seen the impacts in both Georgetown and South Park, and the increasing in traffic. And we have been very engaged, and I'm grateful to community members like Ali Thompson, and the same as John Persack and Greg Ramirez, who have been working with our own stakeholder communities, and how do we mitigate these additional traffic, but also working on and good opportunities for our community to understand what's going on, and also to provide some voice and momentum for the improvements, and to how are we going to be dealing with the next 2 or 3 years as this impact the traffic increases into the pollution that we already have. So I would like to open to anyone here on our community task force, if you would like to share something about the year mark or the milestone. Questions? Anyone?
Let's see those hands raised.
All right. You do see hands raised?
No, not yet.
Oh, I see. I was like, where? I don't see them yet. Maybe I would call Deb because she was very, there you go. I knew that Deb, you would go for it.
All right. Hi, Deb Barker. This is not the she, her platform, but Deb Barker, I'm a she, her. I've been raising this for a couple weeks and thinking that, oh my gosh, we're going to hit a year on the 23rd of the crazy news that we got. The West Seattle Bridge is closed. And you're like, what? What? Big accident? No. Huge, life-shaking closure of this system that we relied on. And it's not a happy anniversary. It's something that needs to be acknowledged, that we have all been going through this situation that we did not pick. And I thought it was worthwhile to acknowledge that. It commemorates the wrong word, but I still hope that on the 23rd that we can somehow come together and acknowledge that it's the peninsula, it's also South Park, and it's also Georgetown, and it's also this area of community that has been adversely impacted and still working on coming together and getting through all of this. I would like to see SDOT have a huge statement of low bridge access by the 23rd for folks who are seeking emergency life-saving treatment. But I just want to say, I acknowledge we've got a milestone date, unfortunately, coming our way, and I'm appreciative of everyone that I've met and who's working on this and for this and coping. So I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Deb. I completely agree with you that it's not a commemoration, but it's also, I think, a way of reminding ourselves like how we have learned. This group didn't know about each other. I think it has great awareness of where we're coming from, and that is the importance of creating community groups into these platforms. Mayor Nichols?
I just wanted to riff off of Deb and her comments. I think it is worth pausing and thinking about this last year, and such an odd time to begin with. We were just getting into the shutdown over COVID. Life had changed a lot, and then with 2 hours notice or whatever, our main access to the to the mainland was gone. But there's been an awful lot of work that's been done since then. Much of it by the members of this task force, volunteers who have stepped forward. And as you recall, during that beautiful summer that we had, though we didn't have a lot else to do, we met about every week to learn about this and help advise SDOT and the mayor as to how we thought we would best move forward. But SDOT, one, having the guts to say this isn't safe and we're going to close this, knowing what a pushback there would obviously be. And all of the staff folks who have stepped forward to help us in our work, help the mayor in making her decision and helping us deal as best as possible with the ramifications of this closure. I just think that there are an awful lot of people who have really earned their pay. Certainly the task force, since we aren't being paid, but many of our public servants have done such a wonderful job, and I think it's a good time. Yes, recognize this has been an incredibly disruptive thing, but two, it was for the right reason, to keep us safe, and two, a lot of work has gone into helping us to reconnect. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you. Jen?
Yeah, I feel very similarly, and wanted to add to what Deb said. I think it's going to be incredibly important for there to be a public communication on that day out from SDOT. I don't know what's planned, obviously, and hopefully that's something you're going to share with us. I think one of the biggest, at least hearing from neighbors and friends, and why I got involved even in the first place, was just the shock of the closure when in that initial communication. The first town hall, I think, was pretty rough. And I think, everyone was in a bit of shock. We've had a year, and having people feel acknowledged about how rough this has been would be, I think that acknowledgement that we've been dealing with this and that it's still an emergency and that we're not going to be left behind is going to be really important to communicate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate your message. And exactly like having a community task force, if we are directly impacted, nothing about us should be without us. So that is what I always think, and the importance of having the voices represented. Port Commissioner Steinberg.
Well, I just want to also add my appreciation and thanks to, first with the co-chairs for managing, a pretty challenging process through COVID in these virtual meetings. I think in some ways it has maybe helped serve to bring us together, because people can in some ways attend the meeting without having to travel and the extra time and all that. And I think it's been a very respectful process of exchange here, and that I'm sure has the mayor's office and SDOT have tremendously benefited from. And I congratulate and thank them, the hardworking people at the city, the mayor and her staff, for being decisive and moving forward. The best news I've heard today was 30% design, and we're going to be going out the door soon. And to actually think that the bridge will be reopened. I'm not sure what the intended date is, 2023. But, I think we have a level of confidence we haven't had before here, that we're on the right track, moving forward, and we're moving forward together with all of the voices and interest involved, which is really pretty remarkable. So thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Steinberg. And to all of you, if you wanted to have more comments through the meeting, please feel free to do so. We are going to be moving on into hearing from Heather next. But again, it's very important, as for Greg, myself, to continuously hear from you, and that we emphasize that this is a community task force, and you are all an impacted community. So we are always going to be prioritizing your voices, and as we move forward. I wanted to a couple of our committee members that sent apologies. Colleen, it's going through an emergency, family emergency, so she sent her apologies. And then Marcy Carpenter will be joining us a little late, so I thought I will share this news with you colleagues. Okay, so thank you everyone for your words, thoughts, and let's move on to welcome Heather into some of those particular updates on the milestone.
Thank you very much, Paulina. And I want to thank you and Mayor Nichols, particularly for your gracious leadership of this task force. It has been a balm for all of us here at SDOT. So thank you. I think we have a presentation. Yay. So I will launch into the updates. Yes, we are at 30% design. We are remaining on track for bridge rehabilitation and are keeping pace with our aggressive schedule. We have started the contractor selection process. The RFQPA went out this morning. We've completed an internal baseline schedule and have an official cost estimate for the high and swing bridge projects. Next slide, please. That 30% is significant in design because it marks the preliminary design milestone. We have established that cost estimate, and I just want to be transparent to say that the entire program, so that includes the low bridge and the high bridge, plus all of the traffic improvements that we're making, all of the structural health monitoring, the phase 1 rehabilitation that we engaged in last year, as well as the program management, the total cost for that is going to be $175 million. For the West Seattle High Pass Bridge rehabilitation, the cost we have pegged at $58 million. And for the Swing Bridge, it will be $14 million. Next slide, please. I don't think this part is news to most of you, but we are going to use proven construction methods to ready the bridge for traffic to return. We're going to do additional carbon fiber wrap on the center span as well as the end spans. We're also going to complete additional post-tensioning throughout the bridge, both the center and the end spans. And we are going to do some ground stabilization work at Pier 18. That ground stabilization is not required to return traffic to the bridge, but it is an important seismic improvement that we've discovered and we want to implement. In order to save time for everybody, we're also including maintenance and repair projects to the bridge corridor to the contract so that we can do those concrete repairs and expansion joint replacements without having to trouble the community in future after we've reopened the bridge to traffic. Next slide, please. So you all may recall when we got the news back from our load rating, federally mandated load rating test last year that the low bridge had some weaknesses, and we've been coordinating our preventative maintenance improvements with the Federal Highway Administration to make sure that it can continue to operate with some administrative changes. However, we are doing work on the low bridge to make sure that it can continue to live out the rest of its useful life and do its good service for the community. Next slide, please. We're glad that the design indicated that all we really needed to do was some additional carbon fiber wrap on the low bridge, as well as epoxy crack injections. And there is, you know, when the bridge swings and then comes back together, it has a mechanical lock system that makes sure that that bridge stays together when it's closed to marine traffic. And so we're going to look at that, and should it need any repair, we will engage in that repair. Next slide, please. So our next step is to receive the proposals from contractors in April and bring them on board by the summer. We are going to continue to advance the rehabilitation design with our contractor at our side, and we will be in a position to provide another schedule and design update this summer. Next slide, please. One of the things that we spend quite a lot of time doing is identifying fund sources for the bridge project. And so one of the things that we're doing is pursuing an Infrastructure for Rebuilding America grant, also known as INFRA. We're requesting between $17 and $21 million. We feel positive because the objectives for this project and the objectives for infra are really well aligned. We would love to ask for the community task force's help in showing USDOT that the community supports this project. The application is due on the 19th, and the letters of support are due to SDOT at the end of the day on the 16th of March. We would appreciate not only a letter of support from the CTF as a group, but also to the extent that you as members of the CTF could go out to your spheres of influence and your organizations and ask them also for letters of support. We of course have a template available and are happy to help with any part of that.
Who will be coordinating it on your end, Heather?
Bill Laborde,
okay,
who you are all familiar with. So he is our superhero when it comes to this. We also have Emily East is helping us out, and Chris Gregorich, another member of our team, is
Okay.
helping to pull those things together.
Those are familiar names. Let
I
me
knew they would be.
let me just ask if any of your organizations, your communities can join with a letter similar to a sample that was sent out. I think that would be very helpful. And secondly, is there any objection by members of the task force to Paulina and I signing a letter on your behalf stating support for this application?
Greg?
Yes.
I would only,
Councilmember Joe?
I would only object if you and Paulina didn't sign such a letter.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We don't have any voting procedure, so it's kind of a request for unanimous support. And if that's there, Paulina and I are certainly ready to sign on and get that our voice heard in this process.
And yes, we were for sure like thinking as a collective. And if you want to send individual letters, I think that is also could show some great community support, and we could provide the wording so you don't have to spend a large amount of thinking and how to make these happen. So if you're interested, please do let us know, or if you're willing to. I think that will show great community support.
Paulina, this is Jolene. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jolene, thank you for being here.
Please add the Duwamish tribe to that list.
I'm sorry, if you said if we could add the Duwamish tribe to the list of supporters?
Your support letter campaign.
Of course, thank you so much, Jolene.
A couple of comments that are coming up in the chat here, just so that folks know that there's a lot of comments on support, but a note that Senator Cantwell's office will be writing their own letter of support, and also the City Council is working on a letter of support for the grant as well, just so folks know where some of those other letters are coming from. And I see that Commissioner Steinberg has your hand up.
Just to chime in here, we are writing one too. It'll be coming out soon. We have experience with these infra grants, and we'll write a good, strong letter of support. It'll come from the Northwest Seaport Alliance, and our staff is working, I think, with city staff as well on this effort. And thank you, Lindsay Wolpa.
Thank you. That's great to hear, Commissioner Steinberg. And please do let us know or copy us on some of those emails or letters. We would love to have also records for our committee into those letters. And I also see that Representative Yapal as well is sending a recommendation letter, and we are very appreciative of her efforts together with the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce.
Jen, did you have a comment? Heather, is it okay if we take a few questions here before you do the
Sure.
last two? Okay. Jen, did you have a question or comment you wanted to add?
Yeah, just a quick clarification. So Heather already mentioned that we had templates and we saw those come in from Bill. And so I just wanted to make sure, Paulina, you had also mentioned templates. Those aren't, you're talking one and the same, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, but you know, it's always good to suit it as you see it personally.
Absolutely. I just
yeah.
wasn't sure if there were a couple. And I had a question because I know this is a public forum and there are people out there, you know, watching. Watching and tuning into this. Is it helpful for individuals from the community, not just us on this task force, but would it be also helpful for individuals in the community to share letters, or is that yes or no?
Jen, we would welcome any letters of support.
Great. I just wanted to put that out there because as someone who has to do this as part of my job as well, to solicit letters of support for different funding applications, I know it's important to get as many of those in as possible.
Yeah, and that's exactly, Jen, it's important because as we all represent different stakeholders, this is something we could be reaching out to our own neighborhoods and stakeholders and encourage for those letters. So thank you, Jen, for clarifying that.
And there's a list also, so in the chat, just for folks who may not be able to read the chat, the West Seattle Chamber is sending in a letter. There's the Junction will be writing a letter. SSA Marine will send a letter. The Soto BIA has submitted a letter already, and Bill Bill, you must have a thick file that you're getting. Peter Goldman also has proposed a letter to the Washington Environmental Council, and then Peter made a note that the environmental justice issue will be important for the WEC. So it sounds like the letters are coming in, which is great. But it sounds like you can always have more.
Oh yeah, no amount of letters is too many. Thank you so much. Are we ready?
Yeah, I think so. I will just note that those of you who have put your name out, you can expect to get a follow-up.
Yeah.
So
Like maybe
Bill.
even before the meeting is over. Thank you. Next slide, please, Megan. So here is a schedule, our 30% schedule. We expect the hybrid structural rehabilitation to be finished by mid-2022. And I believe we've mentioned here that this is, we take the safety of this repair very seriously. And so there will be a process after the construction on the high bridge is finished, where we'll open the bridge to traffic slowly, not over months, just over a couple of weeks. We want to make sure that the bridge and the repairs are responding the way we expect them to. And we'll come back to this group with a more detailed plan for that. The low bridge is going to take just a little bit longer. The repair there is going to go toward the end of Q3. We are working very closely, Commissioner Steinbrook, with the port to make sure that any closures that are related to the low bridge repair are going to be very carefully coordinated with the port and the community, and will be as short as they can possibly be. And when I say short, I'm talking about days, not weeks. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. I also wanted to just gently remind everyone that there are a couple of additional projects that are happening on the low bridge. One is the controls replacement project. The computer system that controls the low bridge opening and closing is very, very old. Some might say ancient. Some might say not supportable any longer. And so we're going to let the contract for that in the next 2 months. One of the things that prompted us to move forward on this at this point is that the communications for that system are attached to the high bridge. And so when the high bridge reached its failure point, we decided it was probably a good time to take those comms off the high bridge. In addition, we are inspecting and repairing an out of service cylinder. That's part of the mechanism that allows that swing bridge to swing. We anticipate that those cylinder seals will be shipped to SDOT this spring, and we are exploring a lifting frame redesign that's going to lessen the impact when those cylinders are replaced. Next slide, please. So those pieces of work will all be done by the end of 2021. So before T5 opens, and our hope is that will decrease the complexity of that. Next slide, please. Okay, so I want to hand it back over to Angie to lead a little discussion and Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have some time here to answer questions. We talked a little bit about the letters, but of the information that you just shared, that you just heard, are there questions? Do you have comments? Do you have things you want to bring up? And I see hand up from Mr. McDermott.
Thank you. Heather, you spoke to closures of the low-level bridge during construction, keeping them as brief as possible, 2 days. Can you speak a little bit more about that? How many days, how many closures, when might they happen?
Yeah, we don't know yet. We don't know yet, Councilmember McDermott. We are moving through the design process, and as we get further in, we will have more detail and more finely grained detail about when that's going to happen. We're just not at the point of design yet where we can tell you which day and how many days.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Deb, how about you?
Heather, I just wanted, this is Deb, just wanted to say, wow, end of Q2 for, that opening. And can that information go out in public? I guess is what I wanted to ask. No, oh, wait, it already is. When people are like, when is it going to be? So I guess if you're putting it out there in public, you all are super comfortable with that.
We are,
okay.
many a slip between the tongue and, but at 30% is when we baseline the project, and
Fair
we
enough.
baseline the scope, the schedule, and the budget, and fidelity to those estimates is what we hold ourselves to.
Okay, I know that people are going to be like excited with 30 days, June 30, right?
No one more than me.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think before noon on June 30th, as a matter of fact.
Is that what we're saying? Make a note of that, Greg. Izzo, not Nichols.
Oh, I will.
Other questions from folks?
Just we're in the as the deputy mayor mentioned, we are beginning the contracting phase where you will engage with potential bidders. In this process, the successful bidder will do the rest of the design work and be responsible for the results of it. Yes?
Heather, do you want me to jump? Okay, so the contractor will be hired to participate in the pre-construction phase, the design phase. They'll be important to our team, but they'll be in no way responsible for the engineered plans. If anything, they're going to be providing very valuable input to the constructability of the designs, more so in that nature, identifying the potential schedule hangups, the risks with us. So as far as their capacity in that regard, that's where they'll be contributing in that. The engineer of record is still ultimately responsible for the design.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Steinbrook?
Just to follow up on that one, is this a design bid build or is it a GCCM? What is the procurement approach here? It's not clear to me.
GCCM.
GCCM. Okay,
And,
so well, it's all,
Greg Izzo's gonna talk about that a little bit more.
Okay,
in the next
great.
section.
Because it's something like this. It's so complicated. I think it's really important to get the contractor on early and working on the constructability.
We agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
There was a comment, Diane put a comment in the chat about the SEIU healthcare 1199 Northwest will definitely sign on to a group letter, and they will also do their own. And they will also be talking to KCLC and WSLC, so asking for a form letter. So we'll definitely follow up with you. And then John Persak also said same. And so you are added to the list that people will be following up with you for sure. Other questions, comments, clarification? Things that are coming up for you? There's another comment. Maybe scroll up here.
I think we have Ann Higuera.
Yes, Anne.
Hi, Ann Higuera here. I'm always interested in budgets. So Heather, I am wondering about the budget, where the rest of the funds will come from, since the infra fund is only a small portion of the overall cost, and also wondering about how much of the cost needs to be in hand by the middle of 2022, and how much of it is sort of ongoing. Like I saw monitoring, is it like 50 years worth of monitoring, or how does that all kind of work out? I know that's a complicated question, sorry.
Oh, yeah, there are a lot of pieces to it, but fortunately we know the answers. So, which, at least we know the sort of the answers. So we have secured $124 million in funding. including federal grants that we've already received. It's $15.9 million worth of grants. We also have about $9 million from the Seattle Transportation Benefit District that is going to support additional transit service for West Seattle. And we have $1 million worth of City of Seattle REIT-backed bonds. So those are bonds on the full faith and credit of the City of Seattle, and we intend to pay them back with real estate excise tax. We're actively seeking right now federal grants, including infra, as well as local partnership with some of our transportation partners in the region, acknowledging how important the West Seattle Bridge Corridor is, not just to the City of Seattle and to, you as a Vashon resident, me as a West Seattle resident, but also to the maritime industry and the industrial community and the communities of the entire Duwamish Valley. And so we are in active conversation with some of our regional partners. And in terms of the work that we're going to need to continue to pay for to maintain a repaired structure, that is information that we've shared with the City Council and the Mayor. It's not insignificant. It's like $500,000 every year to make sure that the repaired bridge is something that's still going to that is going to continue to serve us for the rest of its useful life. So it's a lot of money, and I used to make the joke that we were looking for $5 from everyone, and it's sort of funny, but it's actually quite true. So if and we'll bring you additional details. Our intention is to come to the April meeting with a little bit more meaty details about where we're seeking those funds. We don't want to surprise our partners.
Heather, can you clarify tolling? The question on tolling? So there was a question in the chat. No tolling, correct? And so can you just clarify?
We are engaged in a traffic and revenue study that since we're not replacing the bridge at this point, it's not directly related to a proposal for tolling the West Seattle Bridge in order to pay for replacement. But this is a good time to engage in a conversation with the City of Seattle and with our communities about how we continue to move forward and pay for big infrastructure like this, as we are sort of hitting that point where lots and lots of infrastructure, not just in the City of Seattle, but around Washington and around the country, is failing. And so we are looking at tolling as one of many ways to continue to support that, but we haven't dived into that. Into that. We'll bring additional information. I see you laughing at me, and we'll dive into that a little bit later in a future meeting when we'll have the traffic and revenue folks come in and talk about it.
I just also to sort of respond to one piece of what Ann said, there will be a point in this process where we have to have funds secured to be able to continue with the contracting process. So it's not that we have to have funds on hand by the end of construction. We have to have it really before we begin those commitments hard in hand before we begin construction. And we right now we don't project that we're moving on a lot of different paths forward. We don't project that funding is going to be the challenge that holds us up in this. But we still have some thresholds to cross and make sure that we have the resources needed to bring this resource back online.
Thanks, Sam. I forgot that second part.
Heather, one other clarification, maybe but so the question about timeline, just to be really clear about that, in the difference between when construction is finished and when the bridge is open, if there's any nuance there, just to make sure everybody's really clear on that.
Yes, there is nuance there. And I I would like to be very, very specific about the time and date when you will be able to drive across the bridge. I cannot give that to you today. This is not a repair where we're just going to drop tools when we're done and open up the bridge to full traffic. We want to make sure that this is safe, and we want to be able to measure and see how the bridge and the repairs respond to additional live load. And so we're working very carefully with our consultant, WSP, to identify a plan to reintroduce traffic to the bridge. So there's a distinction between when we're finished with repair and when we are ready to allow full traffic back onto the bridge. But I think, as I mentioned earlier, that's going to be a matter of days and weeks, not a matter of months.
We had a lot of conversation around the June 30th. So I just wanted to be clear about what June 30th was. So
Yep.
Thank you. Other questions, comments, things that are coming up for you that you're worried about or happy about? Okay. Okay. I think maybe we'll keep moving. There'll be time for more discussion if things come up for you as we go along. So Greg, I think it's your turn.
Okay, thank you, Angie. First of all, on behalf of the entire capital delivery team, we would just like to thank everyone on the community task force for being involved so long and the commitment that you've made to provide valuable input for us. And we hope that continues through 2021 as we continue through the design phase. It's very important to get the input from everyone. So thank you. And just to let you know, and I think this came up earlier, that we are treating this as an emergency. Our staff have all their hearts and soul into this project. They realize how critical it is to get this bridge back in service. And so I just want to assure you that our entire team is working hard to do that. And we still treat this as an emergency. So we haven't lost sight of that. There is a sense that as we get into the RFQ, I'm going to share some high level information. It's a bit sensitive to hold the integrity of the process. I just want to be a little bit careful of how many questions we answer around the RFQ. In that it was just posted today, and it's as you all are probably understanding, it is sensitive in that we don't want to give anyone an advantage who may be listening in today or who could benefit from questions or answers. So with that said, though, I did want to share some information about the RFQ. It's an exciting time for us. Next slide, please. We did meet our committed date to get this advertised today. In fact, we beat it by a few hours. We posted it this morning at 9 a.m. So it's now advertising. So this is an exciting milestone for us. As we have talked earlier, we hit the 30% milestone. And as Mayor Nichols had mentioned, we really are able to get locked in a lot more now with our cost and our schedule information. So we're ready to commit more so now that we're farther into design. And as we proceed through 60 and 90% design milestones, we will even become more confident in our cost estimates and our schedule. And even down to the detail, as we were talking earlier about the closures, once we get that contractor on board, we can answer the questions about the days and specifics around impacts of the low bridge especially. So moving forward with the general contractor construction management approach, this approach, as we alluded to a little bit earlier, was chosen primarily because of the certainty and the predictability that it builds into our cost and schedule. This is very important to us and to all of our stakeholders who traveled these bridges to have some assurance and some predictability about the planned impacts around this closure, and so around the high bridge closure. But as we repair the bridge, we want to make sure we're building in predictability for the upcoming impacts to this that are built into the schedule. So that's going to be important. The proposals are due on April 12th. That's the deadline. There's going to be a period of questions that we're going to have to answer and through the process, and then eventually we'll be shortlisting and inviting through interviews and continuing through the process, in which case we'll have a selected contractor probably by around mid to late May, and we'll have them on board NTP by June. Next slide, please. So as you'll see in the RFQ, it's a quite a long document, but if you do take a look at it, you'll notice the project goals, and this goes back to our conversations earlier around how confident are we in getting the bridge, the rehab completed by mid-June 2022. Well, we are confident enough at this point to include it in the RFQ as a project goal for the contractor to also share the same goal with us. In addition to the swing bridge as well. So we have the high bridge completion in mid 2022, June. This is not a substantial completion date. I just want to make that clear. We can theoretically get traffic reintroduced back to the bridge once the bridge is complete with the rehab work. However, there is additional work that may be separated from the rehab itself that we are still completing on the bridge. So there's a differentiation there between substantial completion and completion of the work itself. And we can get into that through a question and answer a little bit later. I'd be happy to go into that a little bit more detail. Obviously, reducing risks, maximizing the quality in design and construction. Again, GCCM is going to give us the opportunity to minimize the impacts, minimize the risks, add more predictability. Typically, when we go out for a design bid build traditional contract, we don't get the contractor's input until they're selected, which is oftentimes too late, and it throws a lot of surprises at us as far as cost and schedule. So we want to avoid that. And this also goes back to the funding opportunities. It is better for us to know or have a much more dialed in estimates as we go for more funding for the project. So it's not just about schedule predictability, it's also about cost as well. Obviously, safety is paramount for us. This is an important goal for us in the RFQ-PA as well, and we want the contractor to obviously share this goal with us. And this includes safety of our workers, the contractor, and the general public, everyone involved. We've gone through some great experience in phase 1 stabilization. There's always some lessons learned to improve on when it comes to collaboration with the general public, with our stakeholders. So we look forward to the GCCM providing and building off of phase 1 and what we've learned from that, and building strengths and improvements into how collaborative we can be with the general public, and making sure that we're transparent along with our contractor and we're both on the same page and both on the same team working with the general public to be informative, transparent, and be supportive, especially around the sensitive impacts in the area, and also to be a good neighbor, obviously. So these are some of the important goals that we've highlighted in the RFQ-PA that we thought, especially the citizens and the residents would particularly like to see in there. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a graphic that shows where we are now. As you can see, the circle with the check mark, preliminary 30% design complete, and the contractor selection begins. The next step will be to start the integrated design team, get the contractor design team coordination going. And the intermediate, which is the 60% design, and the schedule and budget update will be provided sometime probably around July is what we're looking for, the intermediate. So there's going to be a time gap where the teams, including the design team especially, really crunches down, dials in on the numbers, the cost, the schedule, the risks, and that would include the contractor as well, as they're going to be on board and they're going to be helping us prepare that 60% intermediate design. The third circle is probably our next big wave of work, and quite a bit of work, I'll say that, because it's at that point we're completing our design. We're starting to prepare and get solid on our budgets. And again, we have to have budgets secure before we advertise for construction, as Sam alluded to earlier. We want to be fully funded before we put out the subcontractor packages. So this is also around a time where we negotiate with the contractor what the maximum allowable construction costs will be, and the what we call the MAC. And that is the bare hard cost, the contractor costs is what that includes. So we want to have that negotiated by between August through September and maybe a little bit of October. This is an area we're still trying to work out the timelines of this and how this what needs to be done in what order, because we also need WashDOT and FHWA at this point to also approve the MAC and approve our plans, set our DBE goals, my disadvantaged business enterprise goals at that point. And then we'll get approval from our partner agency, WashDOT and FHWA, before we put out the advertising for the subcontractor packages. So there's a lot of work here, a lot of coordination and approvals that need to be had at this third circle. So we're looking forward to it and we'll prepare for it, but I just wanted to point that out. And then the fourth circle is the construction begins. And this is where we physically start construction toward November of this year. Is when we'll see action there, and that'll continue through, as I said earlier, the mid-June date for the high bridge. And October is around the date we're looking for the overall substantial completion of both bridges. Next slide, please. We added this because we wanted to point out some of the opportunities that we're also implementing as part of the rehabilitation of the bridges. And the first one is continuing to invest in the surrounding communities in both street and safety improvements and investments. This has obviously taken place as we've been talking about this for quite a while, but this is an opportunity for us as well. And as we work through the contracting provisions, we're continuously looking for opportunities to help the community and provide benefits where we can. Two areas where we're actively seeking those improvements or those benefits are the potentially implementing a community workforce agreement priority hire program. This is a city program. Historically, on federally funded projects, which this is, we haven't been approved to implement these programs, but with the change of administration, we feel like we have a strong case and we are making a strong case to revive this pilot and implement it as part of this project. We feel it's a great benefit for the community. And it would go a long way. Equally, we're going to be aiming high for our disadvantaged business enterprise goals. This is another opportunity that we feel we can maximize as part of this work, and again, provide help within the region for smaller businesses to take part in this construction. So we're going to be looking at those opportunities as well. And as we refine our scope, we'll see an increase in some of these opportunities. So we'll be setting a goal at some point during middle of design when we're a little bit sure of scope. I think that is it for the, next slide, please. I think that's it for the RFQPA, but I'm happy to take any questions and answers or questions. Thank you.
Yeah. We have a little bit of time for some questions. So anything that's coming up for folks, I will note that Jen Temple made a note that she had to drop off for a work call. So she's not joining us anymore. Any questions for Greg on the RFQ project approach?
I think we have referred to this before, but the importance of bringing some local jobs into the construction. So of course, I'm going to refer to the RFQ as well as how much of that prioritizing, like requests from proposals from firms that are around either Wimby or the communities that are impacted. Greg, if you can refer to some about that.
If I could understood your question, this is specialized work, and we do realize this type of bridge work, post-tensioning and the carbon fiber, there are some smaller businesses that we've actually have communicated with in the area. And this is coming off the phase 1 stabilization, which we learned a lot about the smaller businesses in the area who had taken interest in that project and who are also interested in this one. So we have been doing some outreach with some of the smaller businesses in the area, being open to answer questions and meet with them. And we're going to continue to do so. One of the things we'd like to do is when we get a contractor on board is have them participate with us in trying to do some more outreach. As we prepare for the subcontractor packages later, we want to get a head start on that and begin planning and do a really thorough outreach to make sure that the word is getting out there, the opportunities are out there, and that we get the best talent in the region and meets those smaller business goals. The work is specialized. the major maintenance work that we are adding to the contract could indeed, and we look forward to that, actually increasing our opportunities to get more DBEs on this project. Because it is not so specialized work. It's quote unquote some bread and butter work of concrete repair. This is work that is common amongst many contractors. So we feel like we can increase those goals as we proceed through 60 and 90. So I'm not sure that entirely answered your question, but it's a very high priority for us to take advantage of the opportunities and really provide the opportunities in the region where we can to again further provide benefit to the area. For all that we've gone through, these are the things that we're looking at to try to revitalize and what has been out of our hands for a year and really difficult situation.
Exactly. Thank you, Greg. You did answer most of my question and the desires, and we just would keep on that emphasis on the local job opportunities as the construction goes along. And I wanted to point out, like in the chat, there is a link to the RFQ if folks are interested in looking at it and also helping distribute and getting the word out. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Paulina.
Any other questions or comments or thoughts from folks?
Maybe I can just jump in while people are still thinking about their questions and comments to follow up on Greg's answer to Paulina. I think it's also a place where, Greg talked about some of those places where we might be able to implement our the city's priority hire program, which has a proven track record of success in community hiring, and our DBE and WIMBY outreach. I think regardless of those programs, we also want to broaden awareness of opportunities and make sure we're reaching beyond whatever requirements and programs we put into this to make sure that we're reaching folks. So as we get farther towards that, that construction period, I think that's a great place for us in work partnership with the task force to think about all the ways we can make sure people have awareness and we break down barriers that might exist to people having access to the construction jobs and contracting opportunities that there will be as part of this project.
Thanks, Sam.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. I think I don't see any other questions, Angie, if we want to move things along to the next.
Yeah. Okay, so next we have Heather with the Low Bridge Access updates. Heather, are you ready to go? Back on screen, there you are.
I was born ready. Okay, Low Bridge Access. Next slide, please. So we are starting to have actual data and trends that we can investigate. So you see here a table that has weeks on the left-hand side, and then the middle shows the average weekday volume, and then the far left has the percentage change from the week before the restriction. And so note, please, that at the very beginning of this year, our baseline volumes on the Low Bridge were 7,000 vehicles a day. And as we implemented photo enforcement, we have seen a consistent decline. And if you notice, we have, 5,200, 5,100, 5,000, and then we go down to 4,500. Turns out that right between those 2 weeks is when our mailer hit. And so people got a piece of mail that reminded them that the Low Bridge was being photo enforced. And so this is exactly the kind of volume trend that we were hoping to see out of photo enforcement. And this gives us a lot more confidence as we move forward to broaden access a little bit more. Next slide, please. So this is the Low Bridge volume in the westbound direction the week of February 22nd. And what you'll see here is the red line is the threshold. That's the point at which traffic volumes would impede access for emergency vehicles. And you'll note that we're quite a bit below that with enforcement. I also want to note that we have these little gray bars, and that shows you our estimates, along with our friends at the port, of how much freight traffic is going to increase when T5 opens. So this is the kind of data that we're continuing to look at as we make decisions about how much we can open up access to the bridge and under what circumstances, like what day of the week and what hour of the day. Next slide, please. Here is the same chart for the eastbound direction, and you notice that in this case, we see that T5 traffic exceeding the threshold. And so this is something that we have to ponder as we are opening up access, because once T5 traffic is on board, there's some access to the low bridge that we're going to have to take back. And so we have this temporary several month window of time where we might be able to expand access, but I want to be so clear that it is a temporary window, because once we hit that opening of T5 and continuing to prioritize freight, the bedrock of our economy, we're going to need to adjust those levels again. Thank you. Next slide, please. We are in the process right now of gathering input from community members that we haven't heard from. We are trying to listen to voices of underrepresented community members and consider their needs as we make SDOT's next decision. We expect to hear more from those focused outreach efforts, and we will share an update and next steps at the April CTF meeting. Our intention is to gather enough input and enough data that we can make a decision about how we're going to expand access, and then we're going to try really hard not to adjust that until T5 opens. The reason being, we don't want to create additional confusion by changing the access on the low bridge too often. T5 is planned to be open at the beginning of 2022. Next slide, please. Angie?
Yeah, thanks, Heather. There were a couple comments. Paulina left a comment in the chat about, this is just following up on our last conversation about the discussion about she said we can bring the discussion here to the task force about priority hire. And then there was a question about the T5 open date, which you answered. So I think this is an opportunity for folks to ask questions on low bridge access. Mr. McDermott, I see that your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think we, and by we in this case, I need to give credit where credit is due. I think SDOT has done excellent work in determining how much access and capacity there is on the low level bridge, and making access available to not only transit freight and emergency vehicles, but expanding that access to some very vital sectors. And I believe we have now formally authorized use for people in the medical field who have a short timeline to get to work. If not, I know we're about to do that. And I think all of that access is really valuable to the community. I also, with the delay of Terminal 5, hope that we, and really implore that we take up work to provide access to the low-level bridge for people seeking life-saving medical treatment. We've addressed a number of economic concerns. I'd like to make sure we're addressing some very basic concerns for people who live in West Seattle as well. And if people who are seeking, I might define it as radiation, chemotherapy, dialysis, could have quick, easy access to the low-level bridge when we have the access available. I think it would be a great way to step up and provide support to individuals as well as the economic sector. I would implore us to take up this work, lean in, and I know there are concerns and problems I hope we would find solutions and advance this promptly.
Thank you, Councilmember McDermott. We are in fact working on that right now. One of the things that is a little bit of a barrier to us is all those medical institutions that are that can help us with this are also really engaged in the global pandemic. And so we absolutely appreciate your ideas and your help, as well as Diane. And we are indeed moving forward with gathering that information so that we can do that in an equitable and responsible way. Thanks.
Deb Barker.
Thank you. I want to echo the positive comments that Councilmember McDermott made, and I also want to chime in and say it's imperative to open the Low Bridge to folks seeking life-saving medical treatment as soon as possible. I'm appreciative of everything that I see until I got to page 28 and on the PowerPoint and saw that this topic of focused outreach efforts, more update, next steps at the April CTF meeting. I understand that talking with medical providers is super challenging. That said, I'm aware today that a colleague's husband has started his chemotherapy and he's got limited time, and they're spending too much of that in a car, schlepping through lousy traffic to get over to his chemotherapy. People who are seeking this treatment, it's not a forever thing. It's not a daily thing. I hope that we could come up with, we being SDOT could come up with some acknowledgement that this is going to happen maybe by the 23rd of this month for this treatment that is short-term. It's not every day. And I'm just going to implore people to think about what it's like when you're sitting in your car and you'd really like to get home to either turn that off. Sorry. You'd really like to get home to, you feel like crap and you want to get home. Enough said. Please try and come up with a solution much quicker than next month. Yeah, people are dying out there, and it'd be nice to get them to their treatment quicker. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment.
I appreciate that, Deb. I want to note that many of us have friends and relatives that are suffering in this way. So this is not theoretical for us, and we have a responsibility to the broader community.
We have a couple folks in line just to let you know. So we've got Dan Austin next, then we have a comment from Councilmember Herbold, John Persak, Marcy Carpenter, and then Diane Sosting. So that's our order right now. So Dan, let's go to you.
All right, let's lower that hand real quick so I don't forget. There we go.
Make sure you introduce yourself, please, when you're speaking.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is Dan Austin with the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce, also on the Lower Bridge Access Subcommittee. And I want to echo what Councilman McDermott and Deb both said. I can tell you that we have been working on this. It is we need the information back from the medical providers. We need to figure out the definition, but it's work that we need to do faster. And I agree with that. I know on the task force, we've been asking about this for a while. I'm looking at the first week of January. I believe it's, we don't need to pull the slide up, but I think we were at about 7,000 trips a day, and now we're into the mid 4,500-ish. I don't recall there being issues with backups on the bridge and impeding emergency vehicles during that week of January that we had that was in the 7,000. So to me, it seems like there's almost 2,000 trips available before T5. And I'll be very, just to not freak out my friends at the port and SSA, before T5 opens, there seems like there's more capacity. And I really hope that we can work with the medical system to push this through much faster than the current pace. I've recently had 2 friends diagnosed with cancer in West Seattle, and I don't want to see them suffer in their cars just trying to get to treatment. And this is something that we need to address for the community, and we need to do it as fast as possible. So SDOT, put us to work. Let us know what we need to do, and we can reach out and help try to gather that information, whatever we need to do. But this needs to be addressed as quick as we can. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Councilmember Herbold, did you want to talk? You typed your questions in, but we'll let you go ahead and talk.
Thanks. Yeah, so I have two related questions. One, as it relates specifically to the question about access to the lower level bridge for those folks who are receiving life-saving treatment. I appreciate there's more information you need. I think it would help us have a greater understanding of what the barriers are if you just told us what are you looking for a definition of what is life-saving treatment? Because I don't understand why those folks can't do the same thing that we've made it possible for folks who are providers who are on call. Why can't they just demonstrate once they get a ticket that they were actually, show an appointment from a doctor and what the treatment was, that it is life-saving treatment, and show that to the adjudicator when they get a ticket, just like we're doing right now on a short-term basis for on-call medical workers. That's one question. And then the separate question is regarding Saturday morning access. We have demonstrated capacity on the bridge for Saturday and Sunday morning access. I just want to understand more. And SDOT has responded to constituents who have asked. I've seen the response saying that you actually are considering Saturday and Sunday morning access, so that's good. But just want to know when a decision is going to be made, and specifically what it is you're seeking beyond the data to make that decision. Thanks.
So thank you, Councilmember Herbold. You have a lot of questions in there. First of all, one of the things, yeah. And turns out they're not straightforward answers. So we have the data. What we're seeking right now is input from community members that we don't often hear from. We want to make sure that we're offering access equitably. And so we're waiting for that. Also, one of the things
you said that. I want to know what that means. Who are you talking to that you haven't already spoken with about Saturday and Sunday morning access?
So we have heard from the community, Councilmember Herbold, that it is confusing when we make too many changes too often in access to the low bridge. And so we are going to package opening up the bridge a little bit later on weekend mornings until we have a full package, so that we can get that information out to the community in a way that is less confusing than our rapid fire changes have been. What we are seeking from the medical community is, in fact, not a list of what life-saving treatments they are. There are certainly more life-saving treatments out there than chemotherapy and dialysis. So that's not what we're seeking. What we're seeking is some kind of a way to understand the size of the population that we're talking about. We could use a declaration of non-responsibility, just like we're using for on-call medical professionals, but it turns out that doesn't work particularly well even for on-call medical professionals. And so I understand the urgency here, and I understand how frustrating it is to be on the other side of this and not and be so frustrated that changes need to be made faster. We have to administer this, and it's much more complicated than one might imagine. So we are doing everything we can to move forward. We're doing everything we can to get some kind of a grasp of what kind of numbers we're talking about, because we don't know. I don't think anybody knows. Is it 10 people? Is it 10,000 people? We don't know. So that's the information that we're trying to gather. I recognize that this is frustrating for lots of people, and we are working as quickly and as diligently as we can.
Thanks, Heather. John Persak, do you had a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. This is an issue that's not going to go away. It came up a couple of 3 months ago, and it's unfortunate that it doesn't seem like we have much more clarity on how we're going to identify these folks and create a process for them to have access. What does concern me is that we're having that conversation and the same time we're having the conversation about removing access for people at some point when Terminal 5 opens. And the road that we go down where we're essentially pitting communities against each other for a resource that is finite, I want to call out that it has been said in this meeting and in other meetings on this topic that these capacity figures for the lower bridge are actually conservative estimates. And so I would like SDOT to re-examine those capacity numbers in light of the statements that these are conservative numbers, and see what more capacity can be found on that bridge, maybe looking closer at underlying data that has not been looked at or may have changed in the last few months. So I'd like to put that out there, that maybe those capacity figures could be looked at and adjusted as a go-to, instead of going to a group and saying, sorry, you have to give up something for somebody else. I think everybody can be accommodated.
Thanks, John.
You're right. This is a finite resource. And there's nothing that we can, shaving around the edges isn't going to make it less finite. It is a 20,000 ADT bridge that is being asked to do the work of a 100,000 ADT bridge. We are doing everything we can within safety and responsibility to make this happen in a good way.
I see a lot of hands up, Angie. Maybe we can just let everybody, without feeling like we need to respond to each one, let's let everybody ask their questions, and then maybe we can come back at the end and see, talk about some next steps.
Sure, great. Marcy, you were next.
Sure, thank you. This is Marcy Carpenter, Admiral Neighborhood. So I just want to put a bug in folks' ear about something when we think about life-saving treatments. Those can also involve life-saving mental illness treatments, not just physical illness treatments. I'm not suggesting that the low bridge be open up for every doctor and therapist appointment, but just that as you're looking at those things, please don't forget about that aspect of illness and treatment.
Thanks, Marcy. Commissioner Steinbrook, you had your...
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to Councilmember Herbold's concerns and frustrations, and ask for a closer management of the lower bridge, and opportunity to maybe expand that to weekends for general traffic. I've checked into that, and our seaport operations require 24/7 operations with the ships and scheduling. That said, I think that we can work with the city and maybe in advance provide more specific schedules for what we know to be arrivals of the ships over the months ahead. And they're probably not going to be by the hour, because that's pretty hard to predict. But it seems to me that there may be some opportunity, and to John Persak's point, some adaptive management, so that we can fully utilize the lower bridge in the interim. And I should add that T5 is not, the Terminal 5 has been delayed. Maybe that's good in some regards as far as the traffic loads. But it has, I think it's now expected to be in operation in first quarter 2022. So we more or less have this year before, the really big crunch time comes with T5 reopening. But I have to express my personal sympathy to residents and to those that believe that we should have more flexibility and opportunity to accommodate maybe weekend traffic when our shipping operations are not as demanding. I don't personally know those schedules, but it seems to me that would be relevant information.
And I can see that Lindsay Wolpa posted a link in the chat, and maybe in specific to help answer the vessel schedules and calendar. And she noted that they keep the site up to date as much as possible with ship schedules for all the Northwest Seaport Alliance facilities. So T18, T30, and are listed in there, and T5 will be added soon. Okay, so there were some hands that were up and down, so I'm going with people who have their hands up. Still, if you put your hand down, we'll just assume that maybe your question was answered. So Anne, you're next.
Hi, Anne Higuera here again. I just wanted to mention that Washington State Ferries has a protocol already for doing medical boardings, and that the Low Bridge Task Force should look at how they do it and whether their system could work well for the Low Bridge. And then the other part of that is that I was looking at the graph showing the T5 traffic at specific times. It sounds like that can't be rescheduled out of where it is, but if people know that they can get over that low bridge if they make their medical appointments at a certain time of day, maybe that could help utilize the space better on the bridge and sort of focus people's time. The other part of it is that the access right now for businesses goes a month at a time. And so for people who have scheduled ongoing appointments that they need to go to, you'll know a month ahead what those appointments are if you're granting access to them for medical. So I think there's some controls that you can look at to try to focus people's use and still accommodate them. So thanks.
Thanks, Anne. I think we have two more folks who have their hands up, and maybe we'll go with those two and then move on to our next topic. So we have Diane and then John Persak. So Diane, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a couple of different things. One is Council Member Joe McDermott and I had a long talk about this about a week ago, and we're kind of brainstorming with each other on patient access to the lower bridge. So I have some comments and some questions. I guess my proverbial question about what do we know as of today, the date the upper bridge will be opening and the time lapse between T5 opening and the upper bridge opening. Do we have a better estimate?
Heather,
you're on.
The high bridge will open in mid-2022.
Okay, you don't have anything more precise than that?
Not at 30% design.
Okay, so what I would say is on the issue, I'll take these sequentially, on the issue of healthcare workers, nurses, techs, and physicians who need to be on call and get to work as a condition of employment in 20 to 30 minutes. We've done, and I want to give a shout out to Megan Shepard, a lot of, I think, good work and exploration to try to get a handle on those numbers.
Turned off my screen. Actually, I'm going to pee real quick.
And that has not been as easy as some may think. As was mentioned earlier, the employers, the hospital employers, are swamped with COVID response and vaccination responses. And even though they said, we'll get it to you by this certain date, have not been able to comply. And it's just, I mean, we know what's going on inside these workplaces, and you would think it would be easy. They could put one person on it, but it has not been. We've done outreach to our own members and other organizations representing healthcare workers, and so has Ross Baker, I don't know if he's on today, but at Virginia Mason, to again try to get a handle on it. And it is not 10,000, and it's not 10,000 patients, by the way, thank goodness. But it would be, I mean, I think, do we have the data on how many declaration of non-responsibility of healthcare workers have come in since we started that process? I know they're keeping track of the numbers? Who's got that?
It sounds like we don't have that data quite yet. I'm looking at a shaking of the head, so we don't have it quite yet.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what the logistics are on that, but if we could get a commitment to get that quickly, even this week, I think that would give us some sense. I think for whatever reason, there are people who are not going to make the request and have maybe adapted and adjusted. I don't know how they've done that. In terms of patients, which is the issue before us, I think there's been discussion about this for months. I think we need to make it simple. There is no way we are going to get any exact number of patients going through these various treatments, just not possible, you know. And so what Joe and I talked about was if there was a public announcement, which seemed to be working quite well, as was pointed out by the number of people that have stopped using the lower bridge when the fines came in. And it's either a combination of self-attestation or a physician note that we start with having people do declaration of non-responsibility and get a handle on how many of those people fall into that category where they feel that they don't have an alternative to get in for their treatment, that driving around is just too cumbersome, et cetera. And I think realistically, that's the only way we're going to be able to know. Until we put the call out, ask people, there is no other way that I can think of, and Joe and I explored a lot of options that we would be able to come up with a scientific number.
Thank you, Diane. John, we had you as our last question. Laura, I see that your hand is up. We'll see how long we go with John, whether we have time, because we've got another item to get to. But John, why don't you go ahead and see if you can have maybe a shorter comment so that we have a moment for Laura.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for giving me a second bite at the apple here. I wanted to, I appreciate Commissioner Steinbruck's remarks about trying to have the port be a little bit more accommodating in terms of sharing information about shipping schedules. And I don't know to what degree those could be changed, but I do know that there are things that terminal operators can do to change the traffic patterns for freight. So when we look at these graphs that Heather has shared with us about the freight numbers and how when those peak out, they potentially go over that red line, the terminal operators have the full flexibility to open the gates up on the weekends and for the second shift as well as the third shift. In fact, I believe this coming weekend, SSA over at Terminal 18 is going to be opening up the gates for Saturday and Sunday. And so I think it would be a great conversation to have with the terminal operators to see if they could alter the times for which trucks are going in and out of those gates and maybe create some relief during the daytime so that other groups can continue to have access or expanded access to the lower bridge. And again, the terminal operators have full flexibility to do that. There's nothing preventing them from doing that other than a cost issue on their own part.
Thanks, John. Laura, is your comment short, or do we need to take it for a broader conversation?
Well, if you know me, I don't talk a lot, so it'll be short.
Okay.
Just a couple of comments here. Heather, thanks so much. I know it's tough sometimes putting yourself on the hot seat like you do. Just two comments. Number one, I think sometimes we have a tendency to just overcomplicate things. So perhaps part of the answer to this is we just limit the user group, just like we have with everybody else, just like the small business owners that are using the low bridge currently. And maybe the user group there is a user group for medical personnel, and there is a restricted user group for life-saving. And that's it. And once those user groups are filled up, then the capacity is filled up. And we don't really need to spend a lot of time defining who really actually gets access in those two user groups. And also my other question or comment is, the definition of life-saving, I don't think that's our definition that we should make up, because we're not physicians and we're not the patients. So the definition of life-saving really isn't our decision to make. And so maybe the answer is much simpler that we're making it is just put a cap on those particular 2 user groups and allow people to rise to that and let their unconscious be the decision maker of whether or not they should use the low bridge within those 2 user groups themselves. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Laura.
Angie, can I just jump in and maybe move us along a little bit? Sorry, because I know we're running out of time. There's super great comments and questions from people. And I just want to reiterate that everybody at SDOT appreciates and knows that this has an impact on the traveling public, and that everybody's trying to come up with the creative solution that uses the most capacity possible while making sure that we retain emergency vehicle access, transit, and freight mobility to and from the peninsula. I just want to reiterate that we have heard a lot of feedback about the confusion around the photo enforcement, which now comes with monetary penalties, and that constantly changing things and tweaking it to try to maximize that access has real impacts on people that may be confused or not have limited information that we also want to avoid. So we want to work through the outreach and any changes as a comprehensive package, and utilize that access. And we never want to be in a position where we have compromised emergency vehicle access, transit access, and freight access. And we will stand behind that, and I will stand behind that from dawn till dusk around how we manage access to this resource. If you feel like we are being at all defensive, please know that it's not. We're not being defensive. We're not trying to bat down any comments or questions. It is just very, very challenging to try to create that policy and then implement it in a way that is fair and equitable and still maintains emergency vehicle access, transit, and freight across this resource, which can never make up for the loss of the low bridge, which is why we're also working urgently to restore, the high bridge, which is why we're urgently working to restore access on the high bridge itself. So we appreciate everybody's thoughts, creativity, help with this, and look forward to providing updates at the next month's meeting.
Thanks, Sam. So we told you at the beginning that we were going to give you the time that you needed to have these conversations. So the last agenda item is more of an update. So I think we're still okay, but we're going to move on to that so that you can all get updates on the Reconnect West Seattle implementation plan. Sarah Zora, that is you. I'm looking at yours. There you are. Are you ready to go?
Yes. If we have the slide deck, it'd be great. Hello, everyone. Sarah Zora from SDOT, the Reconnect West Seattle Mobility Manager. I'm just going to give a quick update. I know we are getting short on time. If you go to the next slide, it will just be a quick information about our traffic management data. As Heather and the discussion has already shown, we have been having lower volumes of that low bridge, which is the start of photo enforcement, very important to how we're kind of looking at things and what's occurring. 2 points I just wanted to highlight is that the King County Metro will be initiating their summer schedule on the water taxi on April 19th. So that's a good benefit for additional trips off of the peninsula, off of West Seattle to get to downtown. And we are anticipating working with the Washington State Ferries that there will be a third boat added to the Vashon Fauntleroy run starting on May 9th. So we're going to be focused on some of these changes that are coming in terms of transportation, see how the impacts of these are on the community. If you go to the next slide, I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware that we are gathering input on Reconnect West Seattle 2022 projects. Again, you can submit any ideas or concerns or concepts to the West Seattle Bridge at seattle.gov email address, and we're going to collect those until the end of March and then do a prioritization process so that we can get into the design and delivery earlier on in our typical cycle for crew delivered projects. So we can try to implement some things when that high bridge is still closed in 2022. If you go to the next slide, I just want to give a highlight and an update on the Highland Park Home Zone. We actually had a virtual public meeting on Monday night, this past Monday, to go over the finalized home zone plan. We split up the Highland Park home zone plan into 3 different sections of the neighborhood, since it's a quite large community. So if you look on the maps, on the left-hand side is the Highland Park North, and on the right-hand side is Riverview, where they kind of interact with each other, just north of Holden. So there's a lot, if you see on a lot of the streets, especially on the non-arterial streets, there's a lot of black lines on it. Those are all speed humps. A lot of what the Highland Park Home Zones community will be receiving is from our data and analysis of speeds on residential streets and the arterials. How can we just calm traffic, especially those that are trying to cut off of the detour route and in through the neighborhoods to get to their destination? So we do have Neighborhood Greenway coming in on 12th Avenue Southwest to really connect Highland Park Elementary School to the Riverview Playfield. A lot of different traffic calming coming in. If you see, there's some dots on the map that are really painted curb bulbs, which really help give pedestrians more space at intersections to make sure that they are very visible, and it also helps to incorporate some traffic calming and slowing down of motorists. If you go to the next slide, please. This would be the Highland Park South Home Zone plan, and you can see a lot of different speed humps coming into this neighborhood, especially north of Roxbury Street, where we have had a lot of cut-through traffic coming in through to try to avoid some of the detour routes. We have a lot of pedestrian improvements happening, some stop controls, and we received over nearly 550 comments to our Highland Park Home Zone survey. And so we really appreciate the home zone community to really have a lot of information provided to make sure that we are addressing the right things to mitigate the impacts of that high bridge closure. So really appreciate the community connection that we've had in working with our Department of Neighborhoods partners, Danielle and Christian, to really help our SDOT team and the community come together on what we think should be mitigated for the impacts we've seen. If you go to the next slide, I'm just going to give a quick update on the Reconnect West Seattle schedule. I did want to say that in South Park neighborhood this weekend, we will be planting about 40 to 45 trees on Saturday and Sunday. So that's going to be a really huge benefit to that community. So that's one of the first home zone projects that we will be implementing in this first quarter of 2021. If you go to the next slide, I feel like I am going to be done with the Reconnect West Seattle update, and I'm going to jump in.
Yeah, let's jump into West Marginal Way, and then we can just have a little bit of time for questions on all things.
For both. Yep, sounds good, Angie. Okay, so West Marginal Way, Brad and I were here last month. We flew through a lot of data and information for you guys, and we just want to give a quick update on where we are with what we heard and some of the next steps we have coming up. If you go to the next slide, please. Just quick project context area. As you know, we're talking about kind of the upper portion of West Marginal Way between the Chelan 5-way, kind of West Marginal Place to the Duwamish Longhouse, which is at about Southwest Alaska Street, kind of 0.6 of a whole 2.5 mile corridor of a detour route. If you go to the next slide, please. The reasons why we're looking at West Marginal Way, and I just want to also be very clear that the interim traffic signal and crosswalk and sidewalk treatment to access the Duwamish Longhouse is a project that is moving forward. The projects that we're talking about for potential reconfiguration of the roadway would be that southbound outside lane conversation. So the Duwamish Longhouse interim signal and permanent signal and the crossing in the west side walkway are definitely project components of the West Marginal Way project. The other components are really about trying to make sure we're addressing vehicle speeds, making sure we have better connections between for people riding and riding bikes and walking, and really have some benefits from the safety and predictability side of the proposal we have. If you go to the next slide, please. So just a quick slide about what kind of outreach we've done to date. You know, we've had some typical monthly Longhouse safety corridor street meetings. We've had the DON and our community liaisons have conversations in 7 different languages about West Marginal Way potential roadway changes. I've done a lot of corridor analysis and outreach, and we're still working with our adjacent property owners for the potential project and how that may impact their access. So we have a lot more things going on. We really hope, if you go to the next slide, we're going to be, I'm going to tell you about what we heard first. So there's 3 big kind of overall things that we've been hearing. One is that we should not be doing anything to West Marginal Way while the High Bridge is still closed. That has been pretty, we've been hearing that pretty loud and clearly because of the frustration with the bridge closure and how people may not want to have additional impacts to have to figure out and mitigate if in construction potential for West Marginal Way. We have heard quite differently, just to build it now at the same time as the High Bridge is closed so that there can be better connectivity for people walking and biking in a safe manner and present that predictability for all users of that roadway. You know, we are looking at the potential for upgraded designs for that proposal because we have been hearing a lot of concern about southbound motorists on the southbound inside lane of West Marginal Way and northbound cyclists and how the speed differentials and the heavy volumes may desire a bigger and more concrete-like buffer. And we have also heard that there should be no building of the reconfiguration of the West Marginal Way due to travel lane capacity concerns and then the negative impacts that we've heard from the freight and maritime industrial folks about loss of any future mobility or unknown needs for freight along that corridor. If you go to the next slide, please. What we are doing now, so we are still actively meeting along the corridors, businesses along the corridor. We have a follow-up with the Freight Advisory Board next week, I believe is the 16th, and the Maritime Town Hall on the 17th. We're finalizing our follow-up from our virtual public meeting that we had on February 18th. And some in consideration of things that we have heard, there's going to be construction. What kind of construction impacts would there be for the preferred option, again, that barrier and what that looks like, and also a documentation of the alternative analysis that we had completed to bring SDOT to the proposal to do something with that outside southbound travel lane on West Marginal Way. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is where we are. You know, we are in early March at this time. We're doing that additional analysis, continuing our conversations, especially with businesses along the corridor, and then compiling all the feedback we're hearing so that we can get a draft decision memo to SDOT and city leadership by the end of March. And I believe that is the very fast presentation about Reconnect West Seattle. If you go to the next slide. Thank you.
That's great. So we want to make space for if there, you know, we have a few minutes. If there are questions for Sarah on either of these 2 topics, they were just mostly updates, but
I wanted to clarify Jolene's comment. I see Jolene's comment in the chat. She said, this is not what I heard. She has not heard any negativity about the crosswalk being done in 2020. I 100% agree with that, Jolene. I'm sorry if my language misspoke about that. We have heard very much positive feedback about the signal coming in at the Duwamish Longhouse and the crosswalk to have better safety and accessibility for people coming to the Duwamish Longhouse. So I apologize, Jolene, if I stated something incorrectly.
Thanks, Sarah. Mayor Nichols, you had a comment?
Yes. Our last meeting a month ago, Brad, I think it was, didn't know or didn't have an answer as to how many curb cuts there are, how many right turn opportunities there are, and didn't have any counts of how many vehicles would end up crossing this new bicycle facility into those parking facilities or businesses. Do we have any more data on that?
Mayor Nichols, Brad is with us, so I will see if Brad is able to answer that question for us.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, Brad, thank you.
Cool. We haven't collected any more data on right turns at that time. Again, I think we're basing a lot of it on our observations when we've been out there for hours on end. We'll see. I mean, we compare this to, in terms of right turns into in and out of driveways. That's the type of analysis we'll do on other corridors where we see really high volume driveways, right? Really high demand generating type businesses like supermarkets or, freight terminals or port access or things like that. If we look at the parking lots that are out there, there's just not, we don't observe a lot of vehicles turning right in and out of those areas. The capacity for those parking lots is not large compared to other types of things like supermarkets where you see a lot of turnover. So we have not collected that data. But again, we expect right turns on this corridor and in and out of these businesses to function very much like any other arterial street that has driveways within the city, where it's a low volume turn. We have other two-way facilities across the city. Second Avenue is a great example where we have, parking garages, much higher volume type facilities that we see turns coming in and out of. And so these are much lower volume types facilities. And so while we haven't collected that specific data or looked at that specific analysis, we would expect it to follow any other arterial street we see out there where we see turns going across a facility like this or a sidewalk or anything else like that, and that we don't expect it to be high conflict, right turning vehicles or slower speed. One of the purposes, today we already have a two-way bicycle, bikes already using the sidewalk. People who choose to ride are using the sidewalk. So
yes, but they have a right turn. There is a second lane for people to take that right turn.
Yes.
So you're creating a new conflict. I think we need a lot more discipline in how we respond to this. There are 11 curb cuts along that stretch of West Marginal Way, one of which, or two of which, are for a City of Seattle Parks Department facility, where there are certainly dozens and perhaps more employees who are going in and out in order to service the parks. And so I think, I really want a little more disciplined response on this. That just isn't adequate to say you've been out there, so
Greg,
okay.
Mayor Nichols, I agree. We will go out and collect that data.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. So Dan, before we get to you, there's a comment in the chat or a question from Peter Goldman, wondering whether SDOT will give time to comment on the proposed final decision to the task force. He noted a concern that disappointed stakeholders might weigh in separately with the mayor's office, which would cut off the ability to weigh in as a task force. So a question for you, maybe that's for you, Sarah, about kind of what the process is there.
Yeah, I think we still plan to have that decision memo to our SDOT city leadership at the end of this month, March. And then in the April meeting, we can definitely come back and tell you what was said in that decision memo, and see if there's other comments that would help influence our decision makers at that time. So we would definitely plan on bringing this back to the April meeting.
Thanks, Sarah. Dan, we'll give you a chance, and then I think we'll probably start wrapping up. So go for it.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. I want to echo. I don't want to echo too much because that's just repeating. But what Mayor Nichols said here, I also think we need to look at what vehicles are coming in and out of those curb cuts. They're not a small Honda Civic going to the grocery store. A lot of those are industrial vehicles, larger vehicles that I think creates a different safety issue for a bike lane being put there. On top of just what we're hearing, I know that from our membership, we have a lot of concern being expressed about why we're doing this now and pushing this in. And if it's about bike safety, that's an issue. If it's about vehicle speeds, have we explored other opportunities to lower the vehicle speeds, like enforcement? I have not seen a lot of SPD enforcement down there writing tickets and making a show of enforcement for that to make sure people are keeping within the speed limits and the safety concerns we have there. I'm also curious about the crash data that was provided about how many crashes they had. If we could get that via timeframes of day. I know most of the crashes that I see, the serious ones seem to be late night when people are racing on that road. And again, that seems like an enforcement issue, something I don't think a bike lane would necessarily correct at all. So I'm curious if there's more if we're looking further into other ways to do enforcement besides just removing a lane out of there, and if it's the right place to put that bike lane with the freight vehicles taking right turns into those cuts. So questions I'm sure to be answered later.
Thanks, Dan.
Great point.
I want to make a comment here that Allie posted, noting that the bikes are already navigating these vehicles in an unsafe environment. So that was a piece that Allie added. And then I wanted to go back in the chat. There were a couple of comments, not specifically about West Marginal Way, but just so that everybody knows what the comments have been in the chat. One is about support and really kind of a thumbs up. Deb noted that she's heard really good feedback on the Highland Park Home Zone project, both the process and the products, and said, well done, SDOT. That's nice.
Thanks, Dan.
And then the last one, I wanted just to read the comment that Todd made. It's going back to the low bridge access, but just so that y'all hear it. Todd wanted to reiterate the comments made in support of providing relief for the West Seattle residents who require medical attention off the peninsula. While data is very important in making decisions regarding equitable access to the lower bridge, this is a quality of life and potentially death decision. Due to the scheduling of ongoing treatments, there's an ability to allow access to folks who have ability to submit plans for travel. If there's a medical emergency that requires immediate access, allow for relief of infraction tickets by submitting documentation in support of the need. There is no other use in my mind more important than supporting those who are struggling with health. I will volunteer removal of my emergency business privilege in support of this important access need. I think that goes through all of the comments in the chat. The last one, I think, from Diane Sosney is on West Marginal Way, suggesting that major changes to lanes and bike path wait until the upper bridge is open. So Diane's comment there. I think that Heather, you were going to do some next steps, just maybe like 1 minute on next steps. And then we wanted to remind people to fill out the participation, the reflection form, and that link will be in the chat for folks. So Heather, I'll turn it over to you.
Okie dokie. Thank you very much, Angie, and everybody. What a lot of stimulating conversation. Please do complete the reflection form. As Angie said, that is an important way for us to make sure that these meetings are a good use of everybody's time. Our next meeting will be Thursday, April 8th at 4 p.m. We will have updates on the high and low bridge projects and contract procurement as we move forward. We will also have reports on Reconnect West Seattle project planning, design, implementation, including a moment on the mobility action plan, which is that plan where we're trying to create more opportunities for folks to get around using different kinds of format. And of course, low bridge access policy updates and outreach support, and as well as key planning efforts for high bridge replacement. I think specifically in April, we intend to go a little bit deeper into conversation about funding and how any help that the CTF can give us as we seek additional support from our partner agencies. I think that's about it. Thanks so much for a good meeting.
Any last words from our co-chairs?
Thanks everyone for your participation. Look forward to seeing you in about a month, and hopefully, having some of this additional information that you've asked for today. And we, Pauline and I know will push on SDOT staff to do so.
Yeah,
Pauline?
looking forward to hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for the meeting today, and feel free to email us with any additional questions or comments. Have a lovely evening, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Take care.
Try to enjoy the sun.
Bye.
Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.